Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We turn now to small-town Georgia, where a biracial man who shot and killed a white teenager faces sentencing tomorrow. Marcus Wilson was convicted last month of felony involuntary manslaughter. After 7 hours of deliberations, the jury found Wilson not guilty of felony murder and aggravated assault. Now, that verdict spares him a life sentence. He now faces up to 10 years in prison. His defense argued that he was justified in that shooting and because Haley Richardson and the rest of the driver of that truck and others in that car allegedly tried to run Wilson's car off the road. And Wilson claimed to have heard the occupants inside that truck hurl racial slurs at he and his girlfriend. Now, Wilson's defense attorneys will join us live in just a minute, but first, I do want to get you caught up on that case that made headlines across the nation.
Mark is a gentle giant. He is a big old teddy bear. He's willing to cut his own just so someone else can have an opportunity. That is who he is. That's who we've been raised to be, and that's who he truly is. He doesn't have a hateful bone in his body.
She says her brother feared for his life when he opened fire on a truck of white teens the morning of June 14th. The car's driver was allegedly trying to run Wilson's car off the road, while others yelled racist slurs, according to his sister.
He had a right to stand his ground. He felt like his life was threatened, and I 100% believe that.
Detective Travis Cruin said Wilson's girlfriend was in the car with him at the time.
Mr. Wilson got his gun to show them, "You don't do that," is what she stated. And she saw him shoot at the ground. She told him, "Don't do that."
Cruin said the fatal bullet from Wilson's gun went through the back window of the truck where Hutchison was seated. The detective also said a beer can from the truck was found on the ground near shell casings.
Police later found a beer can on the roadway. Yes. And that beer can matched the beers that they were drinking. Same type. Nobody can state that they saw anybody throw anything out the window.
According to the detective, the teen said they were drinking the night of the encounter, but no breathalyzers were administered. The truck's driver, Mason Glisson, testified he did not hear any trash talking from his passengers directed at Wilson.
Did you at any time swerve into the other lane? Is there any reason that did you have any anger?
One of the other passengers, Luke Conley, was later charged with a misdemeanor for obstruction. Police say he changed his story after initially telling officers he stayed inside the truck before the shooting. He later admitted he interacted with Wilson through an open window. Here's how Conley responded to questions from the defense.
Yell racial slurs out of the window to the car that was beside the truck. Mr. Conley, did you throw anything at the Ford Fusion?
It's a case drawing attention to the small town of Statesboro, Georgia, and bringing scrutiny from civil rights groups over who stand your ground laws protect.
If he were white and his skin showed that he was fully white, he would not have ever been put in handcuffs. At the moment he said he was standing his ground, it would have been, we're going to do further investigation, and it would have never been where it is now.
According to his family, the shouting of racial slurs began after he left this Taco Bell drive-thru with his girlfriend, who was white.
When you have a car full of young white men in South Georgia calling your girlfriend an N-word lover and trying to literally run you off the road and is hanging out of the car shooting all kinds of words and explicatives, you can't really tell what's next.
In a police press conference captured by WSAV, Haley's family begged the public for information.
Our state, our counties need this message right here more than anything. There can be mercy, there can be forgiveness, but justice, it has to be served.
All right, joining me as my special guest for this segment, the criminal defense attorneys that represented Marcus Wilson at trial. Francis Johnson is with us, and joining us on the phone, Mauli Mel Davis, and of course still with me in the studio, trial attorney and law professor Joe Richardson. All right, let me begin with you, Francis, and Mauli, you feel free to ring in on any of these questions. First and foremost, I would love to know how your client is holding up after this decision by the jury.
Well, Mark Wilson is a strong young man, full of faith, maybe too much faith in this justice system. But I'll tell you what, after having heard not guilty on all of the counts of the original indictment, which could have put him in prison for life without the possibility of parole plus 105 years, to be convicted of a lesser included offense of involuntary manslaughter, which is an unintended killing with an unlawful act that is not a felony. Mark Wilson feels much better that this prosecutor will not have his life, that the jury believed his basic narrative, that he was acting in self-defense and saved the life of his girlfriend, Emma Rigdon.
Melody, I would love to know how you guys, and you specifically, how you view the verdict in this case. I found it to be a little bit odd the way the jury came down. I think when you look at it from a legal perspective, but I certainly understand maybe the message they were trying to send. How do you view the verdict?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Michael. I think the issue is for them to find him not guilty on aggravated assault, even of Haley Hutchison, but find him guilty of the involuntary manslaughter. You know, clearly there was, it feels as if there was some confusion or compromise involved in this verdict. We believe had the judge done what we had asked, we initially asked that there not be any lesser included offenses, and that just purely on what he was indicted, that they shouldn't get a second bite at the apple by providing these lesser included offenses. They charged it as murder, they charged it as aggravated assault, they charged it as possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and they should have had to prove that. And if they failed to do that, we believe the jury would have acquitted him completely. However, he did a lesser included, and our request was then add a lesser included of a misdemeanor involuntary manslaughter. And it's our gut and continues to be our belief that if even presented with a misdemeanor, that the jury would have come back with, would not have convicted him of the involuntary manslaughter felony, but of a misdemeanor, because everyone recognizes that this young lady, Haley Hutchison, she lost her life, a tragic loss of life. But what they also were clear about was that Mark Wilson didn't, when he went to that Taco Bell with his girlfriend, with their puppy in her lap, he wasn't going out looking or hunting to harass or to hurt or harm anyone. That his reaction and response was completely justified in defending his own life and the life of Emma Rigdon.
Joe Richardson, let me get you into this conversation. It's interesting that they wanted to go with they didn't want any lesser included. And so much of what you do as a defense attorney has to do with your gut, and they felt that that was the way to go. Love to get your thoughts on the case. I know you followed this case.
Wow. First of all, to the attorneys, that I would say a wonderful job, because your client is going to see the light of day at some point. And at the beginning, that was not the prosecutor's plan. But that being said, there is a thought that perhaps if that misdemeanor had been available, they would come out with that misdemeanor. Or if it was an all or nothing proposition, there was no lesser included. You know, I tend to agree that it would seem like they would not come out and find him guilty under these circumstances. It's also compelling to me that, you know, here's a person that's out with his girlfriend's got her dog, etc. He has a belief at some point that his life is in danger, or serious bodily injury is in danger. The jury hopefully was thoughtful. When you try these cases and you're in the well trying the cases, even as you try to improve the system, you have to take it for what it is. Part of me, I'm not defending the case, but part of me considers it a victory, because there will be a tomorrow for him. I wonder if there'll be some kind of appeal based on them not coming out a certain way on the underlying, because it was a little confusing. We were talking about that. But it's a difficult case, and it reminds us of the larger societal background. Perhaps under some circumstances, this case would not have been brought at all.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And Joe brings up a number of issues there, Francis, but I'll start with one. He mentioned that, you know, justice in this case. I'd love to know if you think justice was ultimately done. In my mind, the overall arc of this case, injustice was done to this young man. But I'm speaking specifically about the verdict. Your thoughts on whether justice was done here, why or why not?
Well, I think the jury, remember, it was 11 white Americans and 1 African American on this jury, and they listened to what the prosecutor laid out in terms of their case and rejected it. Every single count of the original indictment. Ultimately, what this shows is that this prosecutor, Daphne Totten, who has a completely non-diverse office, there's never been a person of color prosecuting in that office in the history of it. There are no people of color on the bench, very few people of color in authority within law enforcement in this area. And it's an area that has 40% African Americans in the judicial circuit. And so I think what it goes to is the way they interpreted the facts, the rush to judgment, and then holding Mark Wilson, who was 21 at the time, who still lived with his parents and was a college student, in custody for more than 682 days. Was justice done? Absolutely not. Remember, I had to go to jail over ex parte communication between the judge, the original judge in this case, and the prosecutor. There's lots of things that have gone wrong about this, but I do think, and that's why I have confidence in our jury system, that if you can sort and search for some fair-minded citizens, and if you're given the opportunity to present a case, and we were given an opportunity with our amazing legal team of Martha Hall, Neff Clark, Maoli Davis, and others who assisted, then you can get some measure of justice. But for this family, that's taken thousands of dollars. It's taken a community pushing. It's taken the state and the nation to put their eyes on Statesboro. And you have to think about the next case and the case after that. So we were able to do some things in this case to stop illegal lynching. But my God, the cost.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you came to sort of this case in a place where, as you mentioned, there were some issues with the judge. You ultimately got that judge removed from the case. I know you spent some time in jail as well. So that's why I said the overall arc of this case perhaps suggests injustice as well. Maoli, tomorrow sentencing, apparently he's anywhere between 1 and 10 years. As mentioned there by Francis, he's already spent close to 2 years, I think over 20 months in prison already, perhaps unjustly. What are you expecting tomorrow at tomorrow's sentencing?
Well, we will bring forward a number of witnesses who've known Mark over the course of his life. And we want to lay out for the judge to strongly consider, under Georgia law, he could reduce this to a misdemeanor and give credit for time served, and Mark could be released tomorrow. And so our hope is that the judge will hear these voices, will take into consideration all of the facts that he, in fact, had not intended on doing anything but getting Taco Bell that night and returning home with girlfriend and their puppy, and would consider to reduce this down to a misdemeanor and give him credit for time served, so that he might be able to move on with his life. He has served significant amount of time in the pre-trial custody, and then now, since the conviction, he has been in jail. And so we think the fair thing at this point, with all that we know and all that the judge had an opportunity to hear, keeping in mind that even one of the victims exercised his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate, Luke Conley, and he never testified. And he was one of the aggravated assault charges was against him, and he never even testified. And so with all of that in consideration, we would hope the judge would show mercy and really strike justice by releasing this young man back to his family so he can return to college, to work, and to advocate about the changes that need to happen in this judicial system.
All right, well, that's coming up tomorrow. Marcus Wilson will be sentenced tomorrow. Again, he's facing up to 10 years in prison. We'll have to see how that shakes out. We certainly will be watching it for you here at Court TV.